designed to transform how investors connect with small-cap companies. The Prism Marketplace is a year-round hub for networking, insights, and deal-making. This immersive venue is still evolving, and we are committed to continuously enhancing the platform with new features and opportunities throughout the year. Before we proceed, let me share some important housekeeping items. Once the panel has ended, we will transition to live questions. Please post your questions in the chat box, and we will be sure to address them at the end. I hope you were able to grab a seat by clicking on one of the chairs in our auditorium. This immersive experience allows you to be part of the audience virtually. You can update your profile by clicking on the profile icon in the top right of your screen. Feel free to customize your avatar to personalize your presence in this virtual space. To move around the space, use the menu in the top left or your arrow keys and mouse. Simply point and click to where you'd like to go. Please be sure to visit the booths and engage with one another in the chat. You can turn on your webcam and microphones to network with fellow attendees, creating a more interactive experience. We're thrilled to have you all here for this exciting event. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Crypto Horizons, reshaping business landscapes, strategies, and fundraising. Proudly presented by Prism Marketplace. I'm Tor Constantino, AI columnist at Forbes, and your moderator for today's discussion. I'm thrilled to be joined by our distinguished panel of experts. Now, as we all know, blockchain and crypto continue to evolve at a rapid pace, transforming industries, business models, and investment strategies. Well, today, we're going to deep dive into how businesses, both traditional and emerging, can navigate the shifting landscape, leverage blockchain technology, and capitalize on new opportunities. With that, I'll respectfully ask our panelists to each introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Ashley. I am the founder and managing partner of Slay Ventures. We have a venture studio in Reno, Nevada, and I've been in blockchain, dabbled in 2009, full-time since 2012, and traveled the world teaching hedge funds, family offices, and other VCs due diligence and compliance.
Very good. Chris, how about you?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Groshong. I am the founder of Coinstructive and the Crypto Recovery Alliance. We provide services in the crypto space for financial compliance for crypto financial institutions, as well as doing investigation work. And the cryptocurrency, or the Crypto Recovery Alliance, aids victims in recovering crypto, helping them blockchain forensics investigations for no cost. Because victims are the ones who need it the worst, or need it the most, right? Because they're the ones that are damaged the worst. So
I have hundreds of clients for you. Hundreds.
Fantastic. Building people together and building bridges. That's what this is all about. Joseph, please, if you go next.
Hello, my name is Joseph Albignana, and I'm operations manager at Coinstructive alongside Chris. I mainly help with the fraud investigation side, speaking to customers and spreading awareness on what to look for and how to avoid crypto scams and fraud.
Yuri, last but not least.
Yes, thank you, Thor. I'm Yuri Bilast. I'm actually Belgian, living in Lisbon, in Portugal. People know me as the Web3 CMO because my podcast is the Web3 CMO Stories podcast. I am a fractional CMO for Tech Scale-Ups, AI Web3, and I also am the organizer of Web3 AI retreats here in Portugal called Sintra Synergies.
Very good. Thank you all so much. For the audience, we're going to go through a series of questions that we've prepared, and then after that, we'll open the floor to the public. And without further ado, let's jump right in. So, panel, how can traditional businesses start integrating blockchain technology into their respective operations? And what are some low-hanging fruit opportunities? And we'll go all around. And Yuri, why don't you start?
Were you pointing to me?
If Yuri could start,
yeah,
or whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I would, because I'm this is one of the questions because we are in a panel with so many experienced people, and for me, I'm the youngest person in the Web3, I'd say less experienced one. But what I'm doing with crypto, what my low-hanging fruit would be, is just start accepting crypto payments if you are a traditional business. Like, this is for me the lowest hanging fruit. I've seen it with my podcast. People want to sponsor it, they want to come on, and they want to pay in crypto. As a business, I can send them an invoice through X money, and they can then pay into crypto. So I think this is maybe the first thing to do, start accepting them.
Adrian, would you build on that?
I will. One of the things that we're building in our venture studio is a loyalty program that's built on crypto. And people already know how to collect points. They know how to do all of these things. What we're doing is we're building a better mousetrap and building it in such a way that they're using it and they're engaging with blockchain, but they don't feel like 26 hexadecimal public and private keys and all of that fear of losing all of their everything. And so I always liken it like this. Look, you use email every day. You don't know how it works, but you still use it. So while we're building all of these things out, we need to build them in a consumer-friendly manner if we're going to drive mainstream consumer adoption. So it has to look and feel friendly. It has to feel normal and relatable. And so that's how we're building these things in the first place. And rather than building in quote unquote crypto requires blockchain. Blockchain does not require crypto. So starting these businesses, moving them into Web3, one of the easiest ways to do that is to just build in some immutability pieces into what they're already doing. And supply chain is a great piece in that. Loyalty is super easy because most of them don't already have a loyalty program. So building in a Web3 loyalty program, they need a loyalty and it's Web3, so it's a double win.
Nice. Chris, do you have any low-hanging fruit opportunities to share?
I would say that that the first two suggestions by Adrian and Yuri were perfect because as you keep going, they get more and more complex. So, and some of the technology, you know, people have been working on around like file storage that's in a decentralized manner for, you know, an alternative method to having your data in a centralized location that can be shut off. Now, these are things that are one a little bit more expensive than your traditional storage operators, so you're not going to get the same kind of deal or the same kind of speeds that you would expect from like an AWS. So we're not quite there yet when it comes to things like large storage or allowing users to store data, but I do think that things like what Yuri and Adrian have mentioned, loyalty programs and accepting payments. And I even think, depending on the business, like you can have things like a DAO for the community, right? So a decentralized kind of autonomous organization. Right. And we're starting to see people, based on how they want to operate their business, have options for different structures. So it's not necessarily using blockchain, but it is, and it can be for things like voting, for how you want to move things forward within that organization and democratize the access to the people who are supporting the project.
Right.
I want to push back a little bit on that storage thing, because have you seen DStor, DSTOR? Because they are less than AWS and they are decentralized storage. And they're fabulous.
Well, there you go.
Nice.
So sometimes the costs are cheaper,
Yeah.
but there I would still say that it's not something that is quite on the mainstream or the easy side of implementation.
Correct. That's absolutely true.
Chris, by the way, I saw what you did there when you used DAO. Then you went and explained to the audience what a decentralized autonomous organization was. I would ask that of all of our panel. We can't assume that everybody is crypto native here, but I appreciate that best practice that you set the pace for us, Chris. Joseph, I'm not sure if they left anything else for you to glean from this, but do you have any low-hanging fruit opportunities?
Tor, they didn't. They stole all the good answers. But I will say that accepting payments and a loyalty program does seem to be the easiest route into bringing your company or business into this. Accepting payments is relatively easy enough once you start looking around for who does it. As far as loyalty programs, like Adrian already mentioned, if they don't have one, it could always be improved upon or expanded upon with something. And I think that's a really easy way to get the general public on board. They're already kind of used to this in terms of this sort of system, miles or points, or it's something that they're familiar with. So bridging that over to crypto, I don't think would be terribly difficult. I will say that in preparation for being the last person and possibly not getting as many options for answers, I also did some notes. I think raising capital could be another one, as well as perhaps inventory and tracking, but I guess that depends on the industry.
Excellent. Joseph, I'm going to be cycling through and starting with different people each time just to avoid this very thing. We didn't want you to get stuck each question with the dregs of answers. So with that, what are the most promising use cases for blockchain in enterprise settings that you've seen emerge recently, Joseph? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess it's kind of a good segue into from what I just mentioned with the inventory and tracking. There's a lot of different novel approaches once you start getting into real world assets. And one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting was De Beers that uses blockchain. I think it's called Tracer. TRACR, and so that way they can track the supply chain of the diamonds to make sure that they're not conflict free. I think that's a beautiful thing. I know other companies are doing similar types of things to track the life cycle of their goods and gain insights from that.
Excellent.
I actually worked on a project in 2015, 2016. That's still around, believe it or not, using blockchain similarly to the De Beers project. It's called Gcoin. It was to track conflict-free gold from the mouth of the mine all the way through the process of purification, and then so that someone could attest to the labor that went into it, the practices behind it. And then you can purchase that gold, right? And it can be stored for you, and then you can have it delivered. So some of those projects actually found a use case and are still viable, surprisingly enough.
And Chris, you actually worked on that project, you said.
That's amazing. I actually helped design the supply chain.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the mining industry. I'll tell you, not crypto mining.
Adrian, how about you? Any thoughts as far as the most promising use case for blockchain in enterprise settings?
So in enterprise settings, I believe it was early 2018 when I was talking on a stage at one of the big Bitcoin conferences, and I came up with an idea. I just talked to someone, and they were spending $20 million a year just to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley. And it was like 3 months of disruption, having all of the auditors and the accountants. And I was like, why don't you just put blockchain integration in there so you have hooks into everything? You press a button. This is the actual report. It's immutable. This is actually what happened. Then you scan it, and if you see something is out of place, you go and you correct it, but it's notated that was corrected by this person at this time. And by pushing that button, you're now spending maybe $1 million a year instead of 20 million, and your reports are done in 10 minutes. Why are we not doing that with everybody? I especially think we're about to start doing that with Doge. You want to talk enterprise, like the largest integrated accounting system that needs to be modernized and upgraded because they're still using COBOL from 1970. That is where I think the biggest bang for the buck is going to be, when you have the immediate ability, especially tying it in with AI, to be able to simply type a question into a box and boom, there's your answer. There's the report, there's the spreadsheet, and there's the real-time numbers.
Nice. I suspect we'll be talking more about decentralized AI throughout this discussion. I'm sure of that. Yuri, how about you? What's the best enterprise solution or use case, perhaps, for blockchain technology that you've seen or thought about?
I'm not sure if it's the best, but an interesting one is decentralized cloud computing, where you get the resources that are not used, your computers that are just there in the office, that you use them, that you share them, that you lend them out, and that you get, I would say, paid for it in tokens or in crypto. And a company that I've been working with Valo. They have an app like that, which you can install. It can be for like home users, like at home, but it can also be for big companies who use their idle resources to get passive income in that way.
Excellent. All excellent observations and great ideas to a person. Chris, let's start with you for this next question. How do you see the regulatory landscape for cryptocurrencies and blockchain evolving through 2025, specifically here in the US? And what impact do you foresee that having on adoption?
Sorry, I'm started laughing because it seems that's just such a loaded question this year.
Sorry.
No, I
Right?
only I mean like it feels like every week something new is happening and like it's just like crazy town everywhere. So where is regulation actually going to go? That's a really great question. But I will say that there has been a continual push kind of behind the scenes for many years on money transmitter licensing approval for a lot of these crypto financial institutions, because right now every state is doing it a little bit different. So, and so there's this organization called the there's a project that is put on by the CSBS, and I'm blanking on the name. It's like Consumer State Banking Board of Supervisors or something like that. And they have been putting together a template law called the Money Transmission Modernization Act. And over the last couple of years, different states have been adopting this template law and inserting it into their regulations to harmonize, because right now each state does it somewhat differently. And so it's a heavy burden for a crypto company to try to get licensed in all these different states. And some states say you need a license and some states say you don't, right? And they all use different language. So what we're seeing more is this convergence to the harmonization around what is money transmission and what does it mean and how do you need to fit in the box so you can get a license and operate without uncertainty. Although, we are still in a very uncertain time because we're seeing kind of retractions from organizations like the SEC and things like that. So there's still a lot to be uncovered here as far as regulation go, but I will say one of the biggest things, because certain states have passed legislation like outlawing or prohibiting the formation of a CBDC, right? The central bank digital currencies, that people are kind of worried about having this state controlled surveillance money that they can watch where you're spending everything. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Visa and MasterCard are doing it right now anyway. So it's not really that much different, but I'm glad people are interested in this and trying to protect their privacy. However, stablecoin legislation is opening the doors to the exact same thing. It is, people are going to be using stablecoins more. And it's going to be, again, more like the private companies who have access to seeing what you're doing with that money. So again, it's still going to be data about where you're moving, how you're moving, to understand the psychology of the consumer and the user. So the CBDC just means, no CBDC just means that it won't be the state looking at it. Right. But eventually, here's the thing, is that the state auditors are going to come in and look at the data also. So they're all going to have the data. It's not going to matter if it's a CBDC or not. So this is actually how you use stable coins, and the privacy of using stable coins, I think, is going to be where we are headed in the future, on the forefront of regulation to protect consumers. Because if the CFPB is gone, right, and like, where are consumers going to turn? It needs to be built into the legislation.
Got it. Joseph, your thoughts on the evolving landscape of cryptocurrency and blockchain for 2025?
Chris summed it up pretty well. It definitely feels like this administration is more crypto friendly. And I do have some concerns from a consumer protection standpoint. Compliance is a really, really big factor. in these things and making sure that people are following the rules. And when things get more lax, then it can be tempting to bend or break or overlook certain rules, and the net effect would be average consumers getting harmed in some sort of way. And I think that's so detrimental to adoption that I kind of feel more comfortable with. I don't know. You don't want to lose the innovation, right? You don't want these companies going somewhere else because it's too tough to do business in the US. But at the same time, I do feel like some of that is needed to make sure that the people who are coming on are, feeling comfortable. They know that there's a resolution. That's one thing I would be very hopeful for, I guess, would be for law enforcement, authorities being able to handle this. And with a pro-crypto administration, I would hope that more training is involved. They know how to investigate these crimes and prosecute them.
Understood. I hear what you're saying about trying to strike a balance between the, former Gensler reign under SEC of governance by enforcement versus, free-for-all laissez-faire where the consumers can get hurt. There needs to be a balance in the middle. Yuri, what are your thoughts as far as kind of an observer from afar on the U.S. Regulation landscape? What are your thoughts on the crypto and blockchain laws and legislative practices and executive orders that we've seen recently?
Yeah, obviously I'm in Europe and we have the MiCA regulation here, like more is regulated. What I see happening now with the Trump administration, I see a lot of more positivity here from outside of Europe when we look at what is happening in the US. Positive things seem to happen. Let's say that there is less obstacles, like, because I try to follow also what is happening in the news, but I don't hear everything, of course. It feels more positive. I have also the feeling that countries where there is less restrictions, or I would say geographical areas like Africa or Latin America, that maybe they can make some more progress because it's less restrictive, in my opinion. And a company I work with is Rio Coin from Japan, and they only have a few coins that are, that are allowed in Japan. They are so strict in regulations, so that's of course a problem from them. It needs a lot of effort to get where they want to be, but because there is so many regulations, once they get there is not so much competition, of course. So I see regulations have a big impact, and but yeah, we need to have them. So it's we need to see the positive points and the negative points, and then use the positive points in our favor.
Understood. Adrian, what are your thoughts on regulation and the landscape in the U.S. for crypto blockchain?
Well, I'm a little conflicted. I'm partially libertarian, mostly libertarian. I worship at the altar of blockchain, personal responsibility and self-reliance. And I would have hoped that, especially with the advent of AI, that these social media companies where a lot of people get scammed would have already instituted a self-regulating policy. They literally they suspended my friend early COVID for posting a link to 10 virtual museum tours. No reason, just suspended her. So they have this auto magical AI suspension tool, and it does not seem to be programmed to the scams. Even when people are reporting it as scams, those links are still shareable. And I think they need to take responsibility for that. And if they can't actually get their stuff together, even as a consortium of all of them having a centralized scam blacklist, then we're going to have some kind of regulation that holds them accountable for that content and allowing it, because it's very simple. I get scam messages all the time, on XDMs and Facebook, and don't even get me started about Discord DMs. But the links, they're all the same. I mean, it's literally wash, rinse, and repeat. I've seen this exact same formula 10,000 times. So it's not like their AI can't figure it out. And I would like to see them do that. And if not, then I'll be discussing it with Hester Peterson, the new SEC Crypto Task Force.
Excellent. Great thoughts by everybody. Adrian, we'll start with you now with this next round of questioning. Chris had brought up the specter of CBDCs and how scary that would be for the state to have. But President Trump issued an executive order saying that under his administration, it's never going to happen. So what role might CBDCs play in the future of money and payments ex-US? And how might they coexist with decentralized crypto?
So it's a little double-edged sword, right? Because centralized CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. Central banks are the 7 or 9 family. Like, that's the Fed. Now, we actually want to end the Fed and get rid of the Fed and go back to national money. But that's going to be difficult if CBDCs are controlling everything. So the fact that he put a ban on it kind of leads me to believe that we are actually on that road, and they're bringing Ron Paul in for a couple of things. And so I think that might actually be on the horizon. When it comes to transactions and tracing your money, remember, we are constitutionally guaranteed privacy. And cash is used for most illegal transactions because it's less traceable. It does have serial numbers, but it's still less traceable. But the whole point is everyday people are not criminals. Everyday people should not, have it tallied up and at some point have somebody say, you really, your financials could be much better if you just did not get Starbucks. So we turned off your ability to buy Starbucks. Like, that would be a problem. And I see that is actually where they were trying to go with this, lowering it from $9,999 or $10,000 down to $600 that they have to report everything that you spend. So I think we need to get back to privacy. In this administration, we have the most opportunity to kind of push that message that y'all need to let us, be. And when it comes to other regulations that we need, I think the number one thing we need to do is regulate and restrict what third-party entities, like if you've never looked at your LexisNexis report, mine's 250 something pages, 8-point font, double-sided, knows where I lived when I was 2 years old, and has every single one of my security clearances from the military. Why? They do not need that. And why are they housing all of that information about consumers? I definitely think we need a GDPR here. I think the regulations we need to restrict people from using us as the product without our permission.
Understood. Joseph, what are your thoughts? CBDCs, will they be able to coexist in countries like China and other nations where there are federal currencies and where there are federal banks that are really centralized banks that are looking to implement this type of technology? And how can they coexist with public blockchains and such?
I feel that CBDCs are almost inevitable. I think it's just a matter of time as countries around the world are, trying to go cashless. It's a natural progression of things. But I am extremely cautionary about it. I think the potential for misuse is crazy, and I know that CBDCs are banned now, but who knows what's going to happen soon. Maybe certain things have to fall in place before instituting a CBDC actually becomes a viable option, and then what do you know, CBDCs are no longer banned, right? So I definitely do not want to live in a social credit type system where you say the wrong thing, or post the wrong picture, I don't know, whatever it is, right, that suddenly you cannot purchase a plane ticket or something like that. I really don't want to live in that world, but I do feel like it's coming in some form or another. So I'm watching closely to see how that all pans out.
Understood. Chris, how about your thoughts?
Well, it kind of goes back to the whole thought about stable coins, because
right,
companies like Tether, right?
Yeah.
They have the ability to shut off people's access, right? So if you're a company in a jurisdiction where the government wants to strong arm you,
sure,
right, they're going to do it, right? They're going to get access to the data. So because why would Tether go and offer to help freeze assets for somebody who's a non-US citizen, but they won't help a US citizen? Because that would mean more like they were a security, or that they were in control or something, that and be viewed differently in the US. So there's a lot of like politicking going on in the background, right?
sure.
About the nuances between these things. And so like I love your question about the interoperability or how can they coexist. Similar, it's going to be the same as how it is now with regular currency. There'll be places where you can exchange. Only certain probably only certain exchanges will have those CBDCs on their platform, and some of them won't. Or you'll see things more like people having to use decentralized platforms where the swap occurs, let's say from a Vietnamese CBDC into USDT, right?
Hmm.
But no one is going to want to put their hands and their name, right, onto a product where people can then come after you, right?
Right.
Like I'd love to see back to that legislation point is that keep that protection in there for the people who are writing the code, right? Don't send people to jail for code that they writ and people are misusing their product.
Right.
Right. So I think those are my two big concerns. So I think there'll be no problem with them coexisting. It's going to be about free choice for people. That's what it's going to be.
Chris, I agree with everything you said. My only pushback is that if we move to a system where there is a universal basic income, that is only through a government entity that would come through. And
Okay.
if a government has CBDCs as its main payment delivery system via a CBDC, what I've heard and how I've heard explained by a lot of people in the political side is that you get your amount and then it resets every month. You don't accumulate it, and so like if you get 10,000 worth of US dollars in CBDC every month for not working, and if AI is doing all of these things for us and we have more free time for ourselves, that we all, and the prosperity generated from that produces this world where we all have access to a UBI. The thing is that it resets every month. So you're not able to then start accumulating wealth, which is how I've heard some governments considering how to do this. But that's for another question, perhaps, or another discussion. But that's the one that keeps me awake at night.
Can I can I just add on to that real quick? Sorry,
please.
I think because there are states already looking to produce, because the way things are set up currently, that a state can actually produce their own money.
Yeah.
Like Wyoming is actually looking to release their own stablecoin. So how does that, like, are we just going to get 50 state stablecoins then? Because the state welfare program, right? Like they can then hand out the money to the people in their state and they can keep a track of that. So is it just going to be state CBDCs disguised as stablecoins? Right? I mean, this is where we're going.
And they're great questions. And I just saw the Bank of America has announced that it wants to issue its own stable coin. So again, to your point, there's going to be a bevy. We're going to see this Cambrian era explosion in currencies out there that are all going to have to be negotiated and settled on blockchain. Yuri, didn't mean to keep you from answering. What are your thoughts on CBDCs and where they're going and how they might coexist?
Yeah, I think they are coming. I've had a discussion with someone from a central bank in Belgium. Like, in Europe, it's complex with all these decision makers and all these different stakeholders and parties. So what I know is it will come, but people are not ready for it. That's what they said. So they are working on it. Behind the scenes, they are working on it. There is a goal. But, probably also a plan to go there. And that's what they are discussing right now. How can we come to that situation? But at the moment, I know there has been discussion behind the scenes, and it will come, and it will coexist. But how or what? It's an interesting question for me.
So let's get the next question cycle for you, Yuri, starting off. What are some of the key challenges that businesses face when implementing blockchain solutions, and how can they be overcome? And I know that you speak with a lot of individuals via your podcast. What are you kind of hearing them say about this?
Yeah, the problem is, so people, when there is a new trend, be it blockchain or AI or something else, companies, they talk about the technology. They should not talk about the technology like blockchain or Web3. It's, people are scared of that because they think Web3, they think of crypto, they think about scams. So actually Web3 blockchain needs rebranding, that, it's more positive, and that it's not about the technology, but about real life solutions. So they should not talk about the technology. They should talk about the solutions. And then, of course, blockchain is somewhere there in the background. So if you pay in the store, I always say, you pay with your credit card, you just know that it is working. You are not thinking about the technology. And this is actually one of the main challenges, that they need to avoid talking technology and talking about, real life applications and utilities.
Interesting. Adrian, what are your thoughts? Main challenges for businesses to implement blockchain solutions?
I think right now the Visa MasterCard monopoly is probably the biggest hurdle. So a lot of people, we tried to buy something the other day. They don't take cash. I only had cash. Thank goodness I actually had my phone wallet so I could pay with that. So I had to tap to pay. But cash is legal tender. It is required that they take cash, but they've moved everything to just swiping a card. So if we cannot get crypto to the point where it can either integrate with the Visa MasterCard system, or we get all of those machines to actually add one more piece, so we'll have Visa, MasterCard, and crypto, that's what it's going to take so that people can actually pay how they want. We'll probably have better adoption with the tap to pay to start, so that the wallets are in the phone. But we really are going to have to go with the payment systems, or they're going to have a separate system that we send out to everybody. And that's actually what one of the Snap did that. There's a multi-level marketing company called Snap Delivered. They were taking on Uber Eats, but they actually integrated a whole Snap crypto payment piece in there that saved restaurants, like on average, $80,000 a year.
Amazing.
Well, why wouldn't they want to do that? Because they're still getting the same amount of money. They're just not spending $80,000 a year in fees. So that's the kind of argument that needs to be had. But in order to take it across the nation, it was going to have to be done in some kind of multi-level marketing type fashion, where somebody walks into the restaurant and talks them into it. Otherwise, you can't afford the sales force.
Interesting. Chris, your thoughts? What are the key challenges for businesses to implement blockchain solutions, in your opinion?
Cost and manpower. Developers are not cheap in this space, so it's usually the burden of implementing a blockchain type of solution usually falls on hiring somebody who knows how blockchain works, and those people are not cheap. So now there are, like, if we talk about implementing like loyalty programs or rewards, right? The less complicated it is, the easier obviously it would be to implement. So but still, you got to find somebody to help you do it, because most people don't even know where to begin. They're like, oh great, sounds like a great idea, we can save money. Wait, how do we do it? What do we do? Where do we start? How do we get somebody to help us do it? Right? And then all of a sudden you go, oh well, this is actually going to cost us some money, right? So there is an investment usually up front, and it's kind of like with anything, until you start exploring it, you go, oh, this is supposed to be a really amazing solution, and then you don't realize how much time, that there's not a lot of plug and play solutions. There are now more on the accepting payment side, right? But on things like storage or more complex type solutions, then it can really have a burden of cost.
Joseph, your thoughts on challenges businesses are facing?
I definitely agree with the integration aspect of it, of finding the right talent, understanding how exactly you're going to integrate it to where it's worth it, to even have a solution and not just do it because it's trendy. Aside from that, I would just say potential security, which kind of ties into the integration, because if you're not really doing it right the first time, you could be opening yourself up to exploits,
Right.
privacy issues, who knows, regulatory issues if you didn't handle customer information properly, or you didn't KYC properly, or a lot of different pitfalls there. But yeah, for sure, I would say the integration aspect of it.
Understood. So next series of question, first round to you, Joseph. What is blockchain, or how is blockchain technology transforming fundraising and investment strategies for startups and established companies alike? Be curious to get your thoughts.
Well, I really like the lending aspect of it. I think this is something that can give businesses access to a lot more capital than they may have been able to in more traditional ways in the past. So lending opportunities, I think, are great. Also, fundraising. I mean, meme coins. We haven't really even touched on meme coins, but I mean, you got a good enough idea, and you can make a coin off of it, and the potential is crazy. Just because there's definitely a rush right now to catch the next big thing or the next trendy thing, and I guess with the right marketing, with the right hype, with the right cause, you could easily raise money quickly just through making a token. But the lending, I think, is a much more safe way to go. I mean, granted, we all know about BlockFi and Celsius and how many others, if they're not doing it right. So that part makes me a little nervous, but I do think that's something that's going to strengthen and evolve with time. So it'll be a lot more safer to do that kind of thing.
Interesting. Chris, your thoughts on the transformation of fundraising and investment strategies for startups and even established companies?
Yeah, so there's been quite an evolution in this space going back to the ICO days, right? Because if people are starting to get into crypto now, they may not have even realized that there was this wave of investment kind of tokenization of utility to avoid being a security, and that was basically this whole era of fundraising, and it was kind of the Wild West. A lot of people got in trouble for basically issuing securities like stocks, and there was not a lot of oversight on these projects. So, but there was also then this other half where there was legitimate companies who were tokenizing things like stocks, right? And so you could go in and you could use like Reg CF, which is the crowdfunding regulation. And at the time, then people were not as interested in using it because it was just over 1 million, I think, like 1.05 or something at the time. So you could only raise $1 million, right? But you could do an ICO launch and you could raise like 25, 30, 50 million dollars in like a couple weeks. No VCs, no nothing, right? And people were like, wow, this is amazing. And it gave people the opportunity to invest without having to be an accredited investor because you liked the project. So it has already been transformed, really. And I think it's just about exploring the solutions that are available currently for these companies as to whether or not it makes sense to use a blockchain model to put your stocks on and things like that, and doing it through a tokenization platform rather than doing it the traditional kind of way.
Right. And just for those who don't know, when you say ICO, that's an initial coin offering, very much like an IPO that a traditional company would float on the stock exchange of either NASDAQ or Xcyte to try and use as a fundraising apparatus to gain access to the equity markets. Adrian, what are your thoughts as far as transforming fundraising and investment strategies, and what blockchain technology has been able to do in that space?
Well, I have a venture studio and I'm a venture capitalist, so I'm big into this whole idea of fundraising. We have 100 companies that we're building, and we are using tokenization for a lot of those. One of the things that I really want to point out is if you look at more.org, that is decentralized AI, and they did not an ICO. It was the debt lending idea, which was super great. People would stake their ETH. They got 350 million staked in a couple of days. And then they would get the rake off of the ETH, the interest would, the foundation would get that. And then the people who staked it would get tokens. So that was a really clever way to do it. Also, in this whole era of capital gains tax, and, do you really want to be getting rid of your crypto to get something else? If you're a hodler, which a lot of people are, it's much easier to get somebody to stake it, and then they can take it back at any time because they're literally just staking it for the interest. Wiselending.us, that's another one. Audited contracts. Debt is super, super great. And they're going to be coming out with contracts not only for nonprofits, because I have a nonprofit that we're doing it with, but you have the ability to earn interest there. And it's much safer than investing in something because they're all secured loans. So think of it like a car title. The car itself secures the loan. And if you don't pay it back, they sell the car to pay back the loan. So your money's never at risk. These are actually the ways that I think we're going to get more consumers into it. But for startups, that whole idea of saying, look, I have a really good idea. We just need a little bit of juice to get, onto the runway, and give us a little bit of juice, little turbocharge, so that we can start scaling on revenue. That loan idea is really, really perfect because the people are going to benefit by getting the tokens, and it's still not at risk. So it's a much easier ask.
Interesting. Yuri, your thoughts as far as the transformation that blockchain technology is affording to startups and businesses within fundraising or even just financing?
Yeah, it's interesting because as a marketer, a lot of questions I get from those companies that are in these new technologies and they want to have funds through, tokenized fundraising, through a TGE. They want to launch their token. What's important for them, they need marketing for that. They need marketing to build their community, to be able to, then launch their token. Then they need hype, even if hype is not, it's really short term. That's really, for me, not really marketing because it's really short term. But building these communities, having something to offer, a real service, a real product, and then, by offering tokens and having investors from all over the world in an easy way, having them participating and giving them, getting their feedback in a community, this can really be valuable. But it's not so easy either because I see a lot of companies that want to do that and then they fail, and then the community has deceptions, and and they look at, okay, it's a scam, but maybe it was not a scam, but the business plan was not good. So a lot of opportunity is there, but you need to think before you act when you do something like that.
Excellent. So this is our final question before we go into the live questions with our audience. And Yuri, we'll start with you. Looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, what major developments or trends in the blockchain and crypto space do you each think will have the biggest impact on businesses? And Yuri, if you could go first.
Yeah, so for me, what I love to talk about is that the convergence of all these new technologies like crypto, blockchain, but also AI, and then even, immersive worlds like the metaverse. All these new technologies are actually coming together and can be beneficial. Like, we talk about Web 3, but maybe Web 3.5 or even Web 4, where everything is coming together, makes a lot of sense for me. Like, for instance, for AI, you see a lot of, we talked about that, like fake content or scams, or AI is used for a lot of things, but blockchain can help, to be that people are sure that the data they get is correct, because it's on the blockchain. AI can make sure, that it is analyzed or that it is used in an efficient manner. So for me, a big trend is the convergence of all the emerging technologies.
Excellent. Adrian, your thoughts?
So one of the things that we're doing here is mainstream. Everything goes mainstream. It's all aimed at the consumer. In 2025, the only way I think we're going to start to get people to really adopt this is through some form of gamification and entertainment. So we're we're tying in one of our conferences, which is called Art Town, and it's just a big art thing. And it's had some NFTs, but that doesn't really get people excited. However, an augmented reality Pokemon style scavenger hunt definitely does. And then they get an NFT, which they can then mail out to their friends, digital postcards. People pay $60 a year for a Judith Lawrence subscription to mail digital greeting cards. They understand that. They get that. But it is this merging of all of these different pieces where they're using it and they like it and they enjoy it and they share it and they don't even really understand its blockchain. That's what's next.
Amazing. Chris, your thoughts as far as 2025 and beyond, major developments or trends, biggest impact on businesses?
Well, I hate to sound like I'm banging the same drum over and over again, but I really think it's going to be regulation and legislation. That is whatever happens over the next 3 to, well, at least probably the next 2 for certain. But over the next total of 4 years, there's going to be huge changes, sweeping changes to crypto regulation across the nation that I don't think anybody really knows what's coming. And so that's why people are kind of sitting on their hands right now and they're waiting to see before they act. So I think 2025 and beyond, it's definitely how does regulation in the US pan out? Because if the theory really is America first, it's going to be the legislation and regulation needs to change to reflect that.
And not by executive order. It has to be codified by Congress.
Yes, exactly.
Sure.
Otherwise it can be undone. And we don't want just 4 years of happy time and innovation. We want permanent innovation.
Agreed.
Correct.
Joseph, your thoughts as far as 2025 and beyond and major developments or trends?
You know, it's very true that regulation and legislation is going to have a huge part to play in how this is all going to look further out. As far as trends are concerned, keeping in mind that from a fraud awareness standpoint, I like seeing that more and more law enforcement agencies are starting to recognize the issue. I mean, it's one thing to warn people and to give them the information that they need to limit their exposure to those kinds of things, but it's another when it's already happened. And most crypto scam victims will know just how difficult and long the process is to even get a chance to get something back. So I think that's a huge detriment to adoption, kind of tying into custody itself. So I'm really hoping to see more robust custody solutions for the average user. It kind of like what you were saying, Adrian, it needs to be so seamless and smooth that they don't even recognize that it's a blockchain. I mean, they would if it's like crypto or Bitcoin or ETH or something. But there has to be a way for most people to hold on to this if they're going to take it seriously. I can tell you from my conversations with victims is it's not always just I fell in love with somebody and they told me to go to this platform. There are many people who are doing everything absolutely right, but because there's so many different attack vectors, they cannot conceive of how it's going to hit them. And they just wake up one day and their wallet's drained, right? So tying into law enforcement, I mean, the more trained, the more tools that they have to be able to do this, the more global cooperation between jurisdictions. That's going to be huge, because if everyone thinks that their crypto is going to get stolen and they'll never get it back any day, at any point, then it's going to make them a lot more resistant.
And you're so right. I mean, I'm an OG, and even I got scammed in a Spooky Boys DM on Discord late at night. And I was buying one, and then the countdown timer got me. I'm like, I could buy another one. Oh, I could buy another 4. And I hit send, and then I realized that gas was not enough to be minting 4 NFTs. And I just sent them money.
There's a poison for everyone. Everyone's got an opening, and that's why we are inundated with calls, texts, emails, anything, just constantly barraged, because it's not the quality, it's the amount, and sooner or later someone's gonna get sucked in somehow and not even realize it.
Yep. I literally have hundreds of customers for you. Hundreds. totaling
Yeah.
billions of dollars lost.
Painful lessons, but at the same time, to your point, I like that idea of a advancement in custodial wallets to make it more accessible and easier for people. If I can just pile on there, it kind of goes back to what Yuri was saying. I think decentralized AI and something, Adrian, you and I have talked a lot about before. I think if we just look at the landscape out there right now, BitTensor was just added to Coinbase. They're kind of a leader within that decentralized AI. Xcyte last Saturday, they launched their Ocean protocol, and Fetch AI just recently launched as well a new model. So there's this bolus of and convergence, as Yuri aptly said, that's going to be transformative because companies are already biting hard onto AI, and that this blockchain combination 1-2 punch is really going to make it solidify and make that concrete dry or harden. Well, that concludes our prepared remarks and prepared questions. And now we'd love to hear from you, our audience. And before we open up to the floor, here are a few quick housekeeping notes for our remote attendees. To submit a question, please type it in your Q&A box on your screen. And if you would like to direct your question to a specific panelist, please include their name. And we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. But if we run out of time, feel free to connect with us afterwards. Now, let's take some audience questions.
Fantastic. We have several questions that have come in from the attendees, and we'll take them in the order. And again, if you have other questions that you want to ask our panel, please enter them within the Q&A queue. And if you are having it, if you need to have it specifically addressed to somebody, please add their name into your question so we'll get it to them quickly. All right, so the question one from the audience is from Mike. Which industries do you see leading the way in enterprise blockchain adoption? Let's start with you, Adrian.
Oh, the industries themselves. Well, obviously AI is going to be a huge one. And if it were me and I had to put my money on something, I would say accounting, because right now with what Doge is doing, they're exposing the fact that there are 478 major and minor agencies in the government running on 25-plus-year-old software. So I would say air traffic control, definitely there. That's an industry. So anything in transportation, which would also include supply chain and accounting, is going to be absolutely huge.
Interesting. Chris, how about you? What enterprise blockchain adoptions are going to lead going forward here, in your opinion?
Great question. I think Adrian nailed all of them, to be honest. I still think supply chain is going to be is probably the number one.
It's the lightest list, right?
Yeah, it's the easiest. It's the easiest to set up and track,
right,
for track and trace. Yeah.
Okay, Joseph, any thoughts?
Supply chain logistics for sure. I would love to see this expand more in healthcare. I'd like to see it in real estate. And then voting, I would think would be a really interesting one to really have some accountability and verifiability. So that's what I would be hoping for, I guess. But supply chain stuff seems like the most obvious, or the easiest.
You are going to love Citizenly then, because obviously getting blockchain-based voting is going to be more difficult. However, once we get every single US citizen on blockchain with a blockchain digital ID, and they're able to do sentiment analysis polls and respond directly to individual bills and all of these things, when the voting doesn't match the constituents, that will be a problem. And when you get a number of people, like 90% say yes on a particular thing, and in that particular it fails, people will start to realize that they need the blockchain certainty, that obviously there's still shenanigans, and they will no longer be able to just buy and pay for more advertisements, more influence, more everything, because everyone will have equal access. And I think that will prove that we actually do need blockchain voting, but we have to do it, consumer friendly first.
Mm-hmm.
Great observation. One other observation, just to make note of, our friend Yuri had to catch a flight. That's why he's not with us. We didn't vaporize him or kick him off the island. He just had to leave because he did have to catch a flight. So no worries about that. Question number 2 here. How should my business approach its blockchain strategy to remain compliant? And that comes from Kevin. Let's start with you, Joseph. What are your thoughts as far as a business to maintain compliance using blockchain as a tool in that regard?
I think from the owner perspective, I think it's really, really tempting to have that mentality of like, oh, I can do it. You know, this is something that I can pick up and just add to my routine. I don't think that's a very smart idea. I think you should definitely have a compliance person, a professional doing this. The rules constantly change. The rules are different from state to state. And there's just so many ways to basically beg for an audit, and the fines are ridiculous. Not even including jail time. But I would just say, don't think that you can do it yourself, no matter how smart or capable you think you are. It's not about that. It's purely you want someone dedicated for the compliance angle of it.
Mm.
Can I
Can I take-
add?
I was going to say, can I take that further? Only hire a firm that gives you an indemnity agreement that has enough cash that if they blow it, they pay the fine.
That's a good point.
Right? And Joseph, I think we did. He'll come back. Joseph, you were going to say something as well?
No, that was a good point, a very good point, because the fines are just, they can be brutal, and unless you have deep pockets, like if you read in the newspaper the big exchanges getting hit with hundreds of millions in fines, they can take it, but can you? Do you really want to take the chance?
No, absolutely.
Can I add? I like to add that there are different types of compliance based on like what your product actually is. If it's financial, then you have to have like financial based compliance, right? If it's data, right, and data privacy, then you need privacy compliance, right? So you may not even be building a financial product, but you're using something with blockchain. And based on what kind of data you're actually ingesting and storing, you may need to do it in a different way. So it's not necessarily just about the financial compliance side of things. It's compliance with all of the different areas that it might take for, based on like what your product actually is doing, who it's interacting with, like what jurisdictions it's going into. So even like it's just a supply chain related project, will, depending on what entities you're working with and in what countries you're working with, there could be compliance issues around the movement of the actual product, not the blockchain, right? So you if there's real world products, then you have to play in the real world too. So you have to know your environment, your jurisdiction, as well.
And here's the other fun part, and we learned this back in the NFT days. So we have many countries where we are not actually allowed to buy. And when the NFT thing came up, you had a lot of people that were buying art, unknowingly buying art from an Iranian artist, which technically is not legal. So you have to make sure that all throughout the entire supply chain, the purchase history, and whatever you're capturing, that you're not actually capturing felonies, because at that point, it's game over. So the other piece of that is, if you're trying to do anything related whatsoever to an identity or tracking a person with a something, you may accidentally reveal personal information about that person, and it is there forever. Like, it doesn't go away unless you destroy the entire blockchain. So unless it's private, you're not getting rid of it. So these are the kinds why it is always better, as you said, hire professionals. Make sure that that in your contract you have indemnification for any kind of compliance issues. And then also general liability insurance. I mean, it's cheap. Get a couple $1 million. It's going to cost you like $30 a month. It's a great sleeping aid.
Right. Most businesses should have that as a matter of course. Question number 3 comes from Greg. This is going to you, Chris. what countries are leading CBDC development that you're aware of?
Oh, great question. Kind of stumped me on that one, to be honest.
We know China for sure.
I'm trying to think of like some of the more like maybe some of the smaller ones but to be honest, I
All
don't
right.
like the CBDC idea. So I haven't been following CBDCs
Got
to
it.
be 100% honest.
Yeah, we don't like them. We don't want anybody to
Right.
do them.
Right.
But
Adrian,
yeah,
how about you?
y-
I'm sorry.
yeah. Does anybody else have any countries that they've been following for CBDCs?
Oh, lots of them are thinking about it, but not exactly no. And really, the ones that are more interesting are things, like a decade ago, they started working on the petro coin. And I was like, the minute they stop trading oil in dollars, the dollar is done. So the CBDCs are one thing, but really what we have to look at is, BRICS. There's another one. Like other things like that are actually going to be more detrimental than some other foreign country using a CBDC system. I actually suggested rather than a CBDC that we actually create a stable coin. It's in an NFT. So this is the difference, right? A stable coin is still fungible. Non-fungible stable coin valued at $1 that is a US Treasury note coin that is only used to pay and circulate into the different agencies and transfer things around. But because it's an NFT, it's got a serial number, you can track it, you know exactly which ones you sent where, and then all of that becomes an audit trail for the flow of money. And I thought that would solve a lot of our problems, like with USAID, when it actually cashes out into whose bank account. But so I'm actually gonna do a really long webinar on how I think we should fix our accounting system. But that would be something that would be interesting, and it would never really touch citizens. It would just be for internal use.
Right. Joseph, do you want to have the final word on CBDCs, or do we put this one to bed?
Well, I don't really have a lot to contribute on this one. I know that looking at the news and just reading the stories on a frequent basis, it seems kind of like what Adrian said. There's just a lot of talk, and I can't really pin down like what's kind of rising to the surface. So I've kind of adopted the mentality to wait and see a little bit more how the dust settles and who starts kind of moving forward with it.
Yeah.
Well, the minute they pop their head up, they will be shot. They're done. No, we said no CBDCs.
Right.
So I do
But
want to
that
just reiterate. Sorry, I want to reiterate though that the stable coins are going to be treated like CBDCs without anybody even like going, oh well, it's not a CBDC, it's just a stable coin. But it's someone has access to that data and they know what people are using and spending it on. So it's
Okay.
whether you want a private company or a government, and eventually the lines might get blurred.
But it's less about somebody knowing, what I spent my money on at 7-Eleven, and more about their ability to turn off my ability to use money. That's the biggest difference. Yes, we want privacy, but at the same time, I mean, we have tons of privacy tokens that we can always use. We don't have to use a stable coin. And, and as you were talking about universal basic income and where it resets every month, it just means that we have to take all of that, and just like they do with government budgets, use it or lose it. You spend it all and park it in real estate or park it in some kind of a physical asset, buy a little bit of gold, buy boxes of ammo, MREs, those kinds of things, barterable bits of things, so that you end up having a stash and that's your only store of value.
Well, stablecoin companies can shut off people's wallets. So like they can freeze assets. So, if they get strong-armed by the government, they can
Okay, wait,
they can
wait,
be
wait, wait,
taken
wait.
they can be taken over a little bit.
If stable coins can do that, then why am I sitting here investigating a scam where people just send USDT to a scam exchange from Coinbase, where they cannot actually engage with because Coinbase, which was a centralized exchange wallet, so they can't actually do it directly. Are you telling me that Tether can go and take all of that money back?
I know they have the ability to freeze assets. So, yeah.
Because I was under the impression that part of the deal with the centralized exchanges was that they had to have the financial capabilities, just like other banks do, where they could claw things back. And that's actually what I think I told you what Mr. Nobody did. He minted Beeple's 5,000 days version 2 in Beeple's wallet and then out into another wallet just to explain that it was possible because he'd been complaining about it and trying to get people to pay attention to it, and they didn't. So he's like, okay, let me make you pay attention to it. And then everybody wrote about it.
So I think that we may have another discussion for another time about CBDCs and stable coins and kind of focus on that. That might be an interesting topic for another event. Question number 4 here. What banks, this comes from Frank, with banks now able to custody digital assets, how do you see traditional financial institutions competing or collaborating with crypto native firms? Joseph?
With that, I mean, I would imagine that with their weight, they would try to create their own products to isolate their customers and keep everything in house. So, I mean, can they do it all? Maybe not. Definitely not initially. But I would say they would try to. I don't know. I don't know if they would cooperate as much if they had the chance to get that market share. I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Adrian, how about you? What are your thoughts on that one?
I've got spicy ones. So way back when, Washington Mutual gave out a whole bunch of loans, and these loans were basically, 500 credit score, signature only, no doc loans for $1 million, which is, a 99% risk of failure. Bundled them all up, payolaed to get the bundle into a mutual fund rated at an A+, and then sold them to their depositors. So they sold their mutual funds full of their crappy mortgages that all failed, and they cost their depositors a ton of money. So one of the things about crypto is the decentralized nature. It is the fact that you can hold lots of different things from lots of different entities. And if you are relying, which I think a lot of the mainstream is going to do, so we're going to have to ramp up our education. If you're relying on your personal banker and you're just an average Joe, they are going to shift you and sell you what will make them the most commission, i.e. these mutual funds. My mother went in and wanted to sell everything, and I told her sell everything. It was like $1.4 million in Washington mutual funds, everything. And they talked her out of it. And 2 days later, the market crashed. It went down to 250, and she was so embarrassed that she didn't say anything until it was down to $50,000. We went from 1.4 million to 50,000 in a few months. So this is what will happen when we allow traditional banking institutions to basically educate the consumer base on crypto. My
Fair
2
enough.
cents.
I agree. I completely agree. Oh, I'm sorry. Go, Chris.
Okay.
No, I think it is going to be once the banks really start offering crypto to folks, it's going to be a renaissance of crypto. We're going to see things blossom. I really do. I've always felt like for the last 10 years, I've been saying that eventually the banks will look like crypto exchanges and the exchanges will look like banks. They're just that's the trajectory. They're going to blur the lines. And if the banks want to stay alive, right? Because the majority of how banks make their money is credit cards. That's the number one thing. And they already lose a ton of fraud. Like they just say it's part of the business model. Like, okay, if we're going to lose 20, 30%, that's all right. We still make $10 million a year, right? Like on credit cards, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like the small bank like might make $10 million after losses, right? But without that, that's basically their main product. So, and as interest rates, right? There used to be loans and stuff used to be a big money maker, but people aren't taking out loans as much as they used to. So they need another avenue right, to make money, and this is that avenue. So, but yes, everyone's right. There should be some skepticism about trusting your bank when it comes to crypto.
I would trust them more if they would start with a little lending program. Like you can buy Bitcoin or you can buy ETH and you can stake it in like a CD like product and earn interest on it. I would feel safer if they would start with baby steps.
All right.
Well,
We're going to gavel
if
that
banks
one.
can, sorry, if banks can rehypothecate crypto and use that for loans to other people, then we have a big problem too, right? So banks that are like Custodia out of Wyoming, which is a bank that's doing crypto and trying to become a bank.
Correct. They're doing
right?
it correctly, but it's like the meat
Yeah.
lobby. Nobody wants to say, I don't put this and this and this in my cows, because then the rest of the meat lobby looks bad. So Custodia is like, we're 100% backed. Boom, 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 boom. They're doing everything right. And all the banks want her to just stop.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's gavel this question, and in the interest of time, but let's be really crisp on our responses here. Adrian, how can you ensure interoperability between different networks and legacy systems? That question comes from Shen, I believe it's pronounced.
Okay, so there is a platform that, and I'm struggling right now. I want to say it's Wire Network. Okay, so Wire Network allows you to take anything, pull it up, and interoperably on the Wire Network layer, gasless. So that, I think Wire Network is going to be poised to be the end all be all interoperable, because it's the easiest way to onboard. It doesn't matter what you have or what you do. Literally, it's like 10, 15 minutes. Like you're compatible with everything.
Got it. Okay. Chris, another question. This one goes to you. What webcasts or websites or podcasts do you recommend regarding this topic to keep somebody informed? And that question comes from Terry.
Oh, I'm like the worst guy at listening to podcasts.
Let's punt it over to Joseph, and I'll get you the next question. Let's cook that over to Joseph then. Joseph, websites or podcasts?
You know, I have to be honest. There's so many of them out there. I'm more of a sci-fi kind of guy. And you can ask me. I'm true crime podcast all the way, scary, spooky stuff, right? But as far as like where I get my news sources from, you know, I would say like any of the major places. I mean, I use Cointelegraph a lot. I don't know if there's a bias with them of any sort. I read my headlines. I try to hear opposing opinions as best as I can. I would actually say Reddit. If you find the right subreddits, you will get a lot of information that you normally wouldn't have. I'm a big proponent of Reddit.
I would agree. That is literally the number one place I go to search for scams, just to get, like 50 extra opinions in a heartbeat. But my podcast, Minting the Future, which is launching next month, that's where they can listen.
That's the one I recommend.
Where I listen to on YouTube, a YouTuber that I watch is Altcoin Daily. I think those guys are very balanced. I think they're very objective. And I think they've got a very good sense of what's happening within the crypto sphere. Can you suggest an AI tool that develops blockchain solutions? I'm just going to throw that one up so I don't hit the wrong person. Who wants to tackle that? Suggest an AI tool that develops blockchain solutions.
Yes, Spark Engine.
Matt.
Spark Engine.
Spark Engine.
Spark Engine. It's basically, what it ends up doing is it uses AI. It understands all the different blockchain modalities and layers, and then it builds you a graph. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and it does the whole. It builds you. You can build an AI agent that is crypto centric or built on blockchain, whichever one you want to do.
All right, Joseph, Chris, anything to add on that?
Nope.
All right. What impact do you think Bitcoin having will have on meme coin valuations? That question comes from Mike.
What will the Bitcoin halving have on meme coin valuations?
Yeah.
We already had a halving, right? And so I honestly, I mean, all what is it? a rising tide raises all ships, right? So
Yep.
when Bitcoin goes up, everything goes up. But I don't see any correlation between meme coins and Bitcoin, to be honest. The only reason that meme coins may get a boost when Bitcoin goes up is because people feel like they have more money to play with. They're playing with house money. So they might throw it into something that they think is going to 10x or 100x real quickly to try to get out. Most of the time, that doesn't work out real well for people. But I do think that you will see an increase in meme coin valuations over time. But again, 99% of meme coins are rug pulls. So the fact that the token goes up in value doesn't mean it's going to stay there. So that's why I don't think there is any correlation technically between a Bitcoin halving and whatever the hype cycle is.
I
Right.
would
Any other thoughts?
tend to
I got
disagree.
plenty.
How to read Michael Turpin's Bitcoin Super Cycle, because then you will understand the relationship nature between altcoins and Bitcoin, of which altcoins, meme coins are a sub genre of altcoins. He describes it perfectly. I'm not even going to try and summarize because I will not do it justice. Just go get the book.
All
Am
right,
I still
Joseph,
on
your
camera,
thoughts?
guys? My
Yes, you are.
I bumped my computer and it
Oh,
knocked
you're on
out my
camera.
screen, but thankfully, okay. So I would say this. Obviously, we have our Bitcoin cycles, and every cycle there is this huge run up, right? And it gets everyone into a frenzy, and that always just attracts the new users, right? The people that just, hey, like, what can you tell me about this? They always hit their friends up and start asking about it, right? But they look at that Bitcoin price and they, human psychology, everyone wants one, right? Because it's that solid number. And many people will look at the current prices and say, this is unattainable. Like, I am not going to be able to get one Bitcoin. So naturally, they start going to altcoins. Well, maybe if I can't hit it big on Bitcoin, let's try these other coins. And every single cycle, we have the same thing, right? It was ICOs, and then they started being called shit coins, and now we have meme coins. They're not 100% the same, but there is a lot of similarities. And I feel that with every cycle and Bitcoin going crazy, there's going to be more FOMO, and it's just ripe for scammers to, introduce the next meme coin just so they can get some money out. We could talk. I think Chris and I could talk a lot about meme coins, but I definitely think there is somewhat of a correlation, and I think it just adds. It's detrimental. I'm not a fan of meme coins.
Understood. Last question for the panel here. What are your thoughts about tech giants issuing their own stable coins? And we'll start with Adrian.
You mean like Amazon issuing their own currency?
I believe that's what Jared is asking.
Yeah. So I think basically what they're doing with that, and it's not unwise. They're eliminating fraud because it's no go backsies. They are eliminating transaction fees, bank fees, all of the everything stays within their ecosystem. And this is literally how I counsel celebrities from their fan communities is to have their own token, and people can buy in and they buy it. And as the value of the token goes up, so does the value of their holdings and what they can do with it. So, even if it's a stable coin, the fact that it stays within the ecosystem is actually profitable. So, yes.
Okay. Chris, what are your thoughts? About tech companies issuing their own stable coins.
Oh, I muted myself. Sorry. I agree with Adrian, and I do think it's a really smart move. Like the PayPal's of the world creating their own tokens. I mean, the state of Wyoming is doing it also. They have hired X Circle people who created USDC to come in to build a stable coin at the state level. So I think you're going to see this. I honestly believe the next kind of big boom will be a stablecoin boom, and it will allow for interoperability, right? Because people won't be worried about switching from one stable coin to another because it's stable. And And there'll be like an easy, effortless flow of commerce based on stablecoin usage. Plus, I like what Adrian said. It really helps signify and bring in and hold that community together.
Right. And the other thing is that a lot of times it can also be used for bonding issues, which take much longer to get in place for like capital projects for municipalities and such. Joseph,
I was
any final
literally
thoughts?
just going to say that, because the whole point of issuing bonds, especially state bonds, if you have a state stable coin, issuing a state bond is so much easier, and then getting in and out of it is so much cleaner, and you save millions of dollars in fees. Millions.
Great minds and all that type of thing, right, Adrian? Okay, Joseph, your final thought. You get the final word on this seminar, this panel.
Oh man, well, I just want to say it's been a great experience. But to answer the question, it's like one of those things that's inevitable, right? There's a part of me that wonders: there's going to be companies or businesses that are doing that, making a stable coin when they don't really need to? Is there going to be some sort of saturation thing? Like me as a consumer, am I going to have like 50 different stable coins to play around with because each of them is tied to a certain business? Can they be exchanged? I'm interested to see how it plays out, but I do think it's inevitable the way things are going.
Can I add one thing? If you've never been to Amsterdam, buy anything in Amsterdam. It doesn't matter what currency is in your pocket, that cash register can take it.
Nice.
Fantastic.
I have not gone.
Okay. Well, on that final word, that's all we have time for today. And on behalf of the Prism Marketplace and our incredible panelists, I want to thank you all for joining us for Crypto Horizons, Reshaping Business Landscape Strategies and Fundraising. We hope you found today's insights valuable as you navigate the evolving world of blockchain and crypto. If you have further questions or want to continue the conversation, please feel free to connect with our speakers and reach out to us on LinkedIn. That's where we all are. Thank you once again for being part of today's discussion. Stay innovative, stay curious, and we look forward to seeing you on our next event. Have a great day.